Hi, Rosanna. How are you? Good. I saw it. Do you like it? Yeah, it's good. I told everyone.
Okay, we'll get started this evening. I want to welcome everyone to the Brawley City Council and successor agency to the Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. Regular meeting agenda Tuesday, February 16th on this date of 2016, 6 p.m. Could we have the roll call, please?
Sorry.
We understood. Sorry.
I made it worse.
Get some water there.
Take your time, take your time. And minutes will reflect all council members present.
Thank you for that. And if we could, we can stand up for the invocation. We have Pastor Jim Pazan with the First Presbyterian Church.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we welcome your presence to this meeting this evening, and we give you thanks for the ways in which you have blessed us as a city. We welcome the issues facing our city, knowing that you care for us deeply. And in light of this, we humbly pray that you would guide and direct all the business that comes to the council this evening. Through your Spirit, bring them wisdom to all decisions that they make. Give all who come before this council a clear voice. And may all of our work be done in accordance with your will. And it is in the name of Jesus that we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. And then Mayor Pro Tem can lead us in the pledge.
Okay, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you, Pastor. Invocation, and thank you for the pledge, Mayor Pro Tem Couchman.
You're welcome.
Item number 1 will be the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Not in favor, no abstentions, motion carries. On to item number 2, our public appearances and comments. This portion of the agenda is not to exceed 4 minutes. This is the time for the public to address the council on any items not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. The mayor will recognize you when you come to the microphone. Please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments that are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please direct your questions and comments to the city council. Do we have any public comments this evening? Seeing none, we will move on. That's, I would say, almost a first for me, so, or maybe first for a lot of us in a long time. We'll move on. We'll move on to item 3, our consent agenda. Items are approved in one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items to be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Not in favor, no abstention, motion carries. We move on to item 4, regular business. Discussion and potential action regarding the establishment of a public meeting schedule for fiscal year 2016-17 for the City of Brawley budget process. Backup material will be in page 52 of your agenda.
Mayor Wharton and members of council, good evening. Included in your packet on page 52 is a mock-up of our overall calendar for the 16-17 budget process. The process begins with today's mid-year budget review, and then we have a series of topics to be considered by the council. In the past, we have held a standalone strategic planning session. Last year, it actually took the time of a regular meeting date. The prior year, it was a special meeting. So it's up to the council to decide whether you wish to combine that topic along with the other workshop topics of the general fund, enterprise and special funds workshop. If you'd like to have 3 separate meetings, we can do separate meetings, or if you wish to have them combined with your regular meeting schedule, whichever is your preference, we're here to work with you.
Super. If I could lead that just on that discussion. I think it worked out, it seemed to work out well last year. If we could strive to combine with our regularly scheduled meetings. But when I say strive, the only one that I might consider, just my 2 cents on this, would be the strategy workshop as potentially still a standalone. But again, it doesn't have to be. But my purpose behind that, it makes it, I think, a little bit easier for us across the board as council for our schedules. But again, that's just my opinion. I would put that out for consideration.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add my comments as well, I would agree. I think the budget process has been improved significantly over the past 2 fiscal periods, and I would welcome the fact that we can have the meetings be combined. I think it's best for our time and for staff's time, and I think it was very effective this past year, and I would like to continue that process.
Well, I haven't been part of it, but I would agree that probably the strategic planning session should probably be a separate meeting, just to give us more time to delve into detail and opportunity to ask questions, at least speaking for myself, so that I have a better understanding of where we're going with our budget. So I would make that recommendation to have that one as a separate meeting.
Fair enough. And
I agree.
all right, okay.
I agree.
And you agree with that? Standalones, 3.
I think that, well, we're going to do 3, the strategic planning session will be a standalone meeting.
The separate one, yeah.
But the other ones will be done on
Would
our
be
regular
just one-
schedule. I
one
think
regular.
that's the best way to
Yeah.
go with that. I think,
And if we
yeah.
can even limit the discussion those days too, I know.
Yeah,
that-
I would
'cause
like to limit that a
sometimes we
little bit.
repeat the same information multiple times, so.
What maybe we can recommend in terms of dates is, we have had occasion in the past where we've ended up with regularly scheduled items that have impacted our ability, and we've actually even changed the date, even after this discussion here. But what I might maybe offer up for council member Howdi's issue is, we want to make sure there's ample time, all the time we need to do a thorough discussion. So I do want to preface that with saying, if we continue on with the regular meeting afterwards, that we're kind of mindful of that, if we can manage that between meetings, obviously with the focus being on this workshop. So the proposed times on here, which again, these are proposed. If you notice in the April kind of proposed time there without the date, it says 5 to 7. So if we start slightly earlier at 5, in my opinion, we can go until we're done, wherever, and then carry on with the meeting from there, if that would work.
That works.
You
I don't know
mean
if
to
that-
have the budget meeting before our regular meeting, is that?
I think it's listed as regular/special meetings, so,
So in April, if I may, that would be the 5th and the 19th? That's what we're looking at?
correct, and I brought out my
Yes.
calendar, I don't
All
know
right,
if
the
we,
5th and the 19th would be the dates that we
The
would be
regularly
looking at for
scheduled
that.
meetings.
That's our regular scheduled meetings. It's 1 hour early start time.
And 1 hour in advance of that, right.
And then
Which
if you
is
look at
more
March, there are 5 Tuesdays in March. So we can fit that special meeting in on one of those Tuesdays if we could, I think. That'd probably be best.
The
unless we have
strate-
a different day.
The strategic meeting would be in March, am I not?
Yes.
That's correct.
So we could do that if, would the 22nd of March work? Because that would be a standalone, if we're going to do a standalone for that particular meeting.
The
Would
only,
that work?
I have a problem with that because I have another meeting on that evening.
Okay.
That's the only evening meeting.
Or the
I think that I
29th?
have a problem with. The 29th would be fine. I
think I got something on
Or even the 8th would be fine, but but we need more time to prepare, then I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, you're right, the 8th would work as well, too, so.
so let's,
It
8th or the
actually won't-
29th,
it won't work
the
for me.
22nd does not work
week
for
of
me.
the
I would rather do it the 8th.
The 8th of March, I have a conflict.
Yeah, I do too.
okay.
What about the 24th? On a Thursday?
The 24th,
If we
we
changed it.
have the League of Cities, but that's in the
Yeah.
morning from 8 to 9, okay? That's the only thing we have on the 24th.
Is it like a breakfast that we have?
Yeah, it's the one that, I guess
7:30.
Donnie's going to be,
Oh.
right? The League of Cities on the 24th of March? Am I wrong?
Let me look at
I have
Is that the
something.
24th? His State of the City?
Well, why don't we just set some tentative dates and then we can,
I don't know, maybe that's wrong. I'm not sure.
why don't we set some tentative dates?
have
And then
a
we
lot-
can work on the next meeting, we can determine the date.
I have a law conference.
on that.
24th.
On the 24th?
I won't be here.
What about the 29th?
Why don't we look at our schedules and then we propose some dates that maybe can work for everybody? And that way, and we can make that determination next meeting.
That's
I don't think
fine.
that there's, yeah.
Okay, for clarification purposes, so on the ones where we're going to have our regular meeting, we would start from 5 to 6 with a budget discussion and then go into our regular meeting? Is
Correct.
that- Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And I want to assure, there's also an opportunity for the public that may already be attending the regular meeting to also participate in the budget meeting, which typically, at least my relatively short experience, we haven't had a tremendous amount of public participation. So I think kind of putting the two together encourages folks that maybe would normally be coming to a regular meeting to participate in that part of the discussion as well.
That's good
But
to me. The more
if that works, Sherwin, why don't we move forward with, we all have our individual scheduling challenges to put forth the dates that you would have that availability, and those availability dates we will settle on for the month of March, and then hopefully the April dates for the budget process. And if there's challenges there, we can even work through those at the next meeting.
Yeah, because March, I figured, it's
Yeah.
it has more days.
Right.
So I decided to put all what I could.
That's fine.
In March.
What we may do is, if we find that's the case, then we may just go to one of our regularly scheduled, lengthen out the time. And I believe we've had our meetings set up before where, again, these are public meetings, agendized. We can take care of regular business as well, even if we have it at the Emergency Operations Center, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Right, so we need to just
So-
give a couple of dates that we have. that
then
might
what
be
we'll do
clear.
is we'll move on from this topic, but we'll funnel our availability dates with this proposed,
But we're agreeing to everything else.
We've got
Yeah.
the
Right.
5th, the 19th, the
19th.
17th, and
Yeah.
16th are set, so the
And
March
would you
is
like
19th.
the strategic planning session to be held at the EOC, or do you want it in this environment?
It was pretty productive over there. I mean,
that gives it more of a tabletop workshop feel,
I
so.
think it needs to be
Separate
a
from the
different
council
environment.
chambers.
I'm thinking.
I'm agreeable with that. Okay.
We in high agreement?
All right.
I'm okay.
Yep, I'm just looking across, everyone's
Yep,
good, so
I
we'll
think
move
we're
forward. You don't need a motion, but that was just direction.
I went to the retreat. I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm agreeing.
I'm okay.
I'm going to be more agreeable.
Yeah. I read that Facebook post, you couldn't talk? Yeah, that was.
Can you believe that?
wouldn't-
With
yeah.
earlier start
I-
times at 5 PM?
Well, believe it. It was good.
Okay, so if there are any further discussion or objections on that, we'll move forward with that. And if I could, at this point, I know we're on the regular business. Yes.
I just might note, one item is that if we end up at the first meeting in March, which would be the first, not a whole lot of turnaround time, but if you wanted your strategic planning session date on that date, would we need to have action today to allow for that? Because we're not going to have another public
Let's
meeting.
not do
I
that
think
one.
we're
Let's
rolling
look
it out
at
anyway.
We're not
so-
looking at.
Let's look at the
Okay,
second
got it.
meeting.
So we'll
Yeah.
place it back onto
Yeah.
the action agenda for the first meeting in March so that you can adopt the schedule.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Got it.
Very good. So if I could also, we did move on from public appearances. We didn't have the audience that we do now, but I'd like to, if I could, open it back up for public comment, if I'm able to do that. And I have Ms. Katie Procola would like to come up.
Thank you, Mayor Wharton, honorable council members. I'm pleased to appear before you for two reasons today, and I'm sorry we were late. We had a chatty executive committee meeting at the chamber today. First of all, I'd like to formally introduce you to our interim executive director, Katie Luna. Katie has been with us 3 weeks. She has hosted a mixer at the chamber. She has hosted a farmer's market and a grand opening for Merrill Norman. So we have kept her busy, and we're very pleased with what we are seeing. We will do a formal search. The Desert Review has graciously already put it out on theirs, and we're waiting for a couple of others, but it is on our webpage. We will close applications on March 4th and do the interview process. So we're looking forward to moving forward in a very positive manner. I would like to thank the City Council, its staff, for a successful farmers market. Thank you. We had a bigger turnout and a different look. Thank you for making some suggestions. Second thing I would like to address is it's time for the mayor's breakfast.
Yay.
February 26th at Stockman's at 7:30 in the morning.
So it's not at my house.
We're going to, no, you can't, we can't go to your house afterwards because we have an event that afternoon. Otherwise, we'd all be there with champagne.
Susie
Bloody
is
Mary,
relieved.
Bloody
Yeah,
Mary.
Susie is relieved.
Yeah. We have one confirmed sponsor. We're waiting on one other. We were surprised with our confirmed sponsor because they came out of the blue, and it's Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, and we're very grateful for them. We're mixing it up because it's time to mix things up. Tickets will remain at $15 for members, $20 for non-members, but this year we're going to do reserve tables for a table of 8 for $150. We do have one already, and my hope is that there will be a number of folks who do that and drag folks, if you will, to the breakfast so they'll see what a fabulous event it is, and we'll get some more people involved in our community, who live in our community, who simply don't put in the time at these type of functions. So with that, I thank y'all very much.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you.
It would,
Katie?
Well, Kay stole everything I needed to say, but I will just thank you kindly for those who turned out to our Merle Norman opening. It was a very big success, and the business owners are very happy. I'm here at the chamber if there's anything I can do for you, hopefully on a more permanent basis, but we'll see how that goes. But if there's anything I can do for you in the meantime, let me know. I'll be there, and I'll be free for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Congratulations. Okay, then we appreciate that update. We'll go back to our regular business. We're now on item 4B, and this is discussion and potential action regarding the appointment of a qualified elector to fill the city treasurer vacancy. Backup material on page 53. And would our city attorney help us frame this discussion?
Government code provides cities have to be governed by city council, the city clerk, fire chief, police chief, and a treasurer. And unfortunately, we don't have a treasurer right now. There's two ways to fill it. One is to have a special election that costs a lot of money, or the council can appoint somebody. Whoever the council appoints has to be a resident of the city and registered to vote. Other than that, that's it. It's not for the balance of the term. It's only until the next municipal election, which is 2018?
17.
November 17. And then that the position would go on the ballot for the remainder of the current term.
Do all our cities have a treasurer?
Some of our jurisdictions have an appointed individual, and some have the elected position still in place.
Can a member of the city council be appointed treasurer? I'll take that as a no.
No, well, no,
He doesn't know.
I don't, I'm trying to think, is it an incompatible office?
You're right, because of we still approve the same budgets, there is no, there's check writing authority, I guess, so you're right. Why don't we just discard the idea?
I hate to tell you yes, and then you
Right.
volunteer for it and
Right,
find
no,
out
I
you've
wouldn't want to
resigned from
volunteer, I was going to
council.
make a recommendation for Mr. Couchman, for Councilmember Couchman.
Be nice.
Well, I think you'd be,
A perfect city
good.
treasurer, is that?
I think you'd be a good fit.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, appreciate that.
Go ahead.
Can we appoint a city staff person
Yes.
as the city treasurer?
You
Is
can.
is that what happened in El Centro now, that they have a staff person that's also serves as the city treasurer, or did they do away with that?
And I think what El Centro did is they made their city treasurer an appointed position, but the way that has to occur is to put it on the ballot for the voters to
Right,
decide.
right.
Can we appoint our city manager as the city treasurer?
City manager, does you?
I'm not,
She
I'm
didn't
not a
reside in
resident of
Brawley.
Brawley.
Oh,
though.
that's right, that's
But our
right.
finance
Finance
director
director
is.
Finance director, or what about our city clerk?
No?
City clerk?
Is that a no? I think that's a no. from our city clerk.
I think the only,
I don't know,
I
maybe
know
our finance director
in
makes
some,
sense.
in some instances it is it the finance director that has the treasurer position as well?
Yes.
So it's not necessarily another layer of oversight, is that correct? Okay.
The way I understand it, in Brawley, was really critical is that the person is a check signer. And so that
Which, my understanding, we've been challenged, obviously, with that
Mr.
recently.
Hamilton has
Yeah.
continued to sign checks, but that's not an ideal situation.
Right. What about the compensation that's with the position currently? How is that worked out?
Only $100.
Right,
$100
but that is paid to the appointee, is that? Right,
Correct.
But no
So if
health
it was an
benefits.
employee, how, it would just be an additional duty to that particular employee, like the finance director, if we were to go that route?
It'd be a very, it wouldn't be a very taxing additional duty, but it is a small addition.
I think
Another
that
question.
she had already done it.
Right.
She has for sure, the bulk of the laboring orb by
Yeah.
far.
I'm pretty sure it was 3/4 of hers anyway.
Just one question about the separation of duties. Would that mean that I don't know whether she signs checks now or not, I don't think so. So she would be required to sign checks now as a city treasurer? Does that conflict with her duties as a person who oversights the fiscal office?
The way I understand it, Ruby, is that the checks over a certain amount are dual signatures in this city, and below that amount, city manager can sign.
Actually, the way the city runs currently and has, there's 2 signatures on every check, and it's actually a facsimile, which currently has the city manager and the city treasurer. So whenever a treasurer has changed positions or a city manager position has changed, we update that facsimile, and what we do is go across all our investments, all our banking institutions, and we update appropriately. If you recall, unfortunately, prior to the passing of our former treasurer, Miguel, we were updating with LAIF by resolution, because the LAIF recognizes by resolution and then we try to move forward with all the other banking institutions on what their requirements are. Our next step was to update the facsimile. We had already ordered the stamp in place, because that's what required first, because then we send that to the bank for the bank to actually acknowledge any printed checks coming through. So actually, we have a stamp, and currently it's under Rosanna, city manager, and Jim Hamilton, prior city treasurer, and that's basically under lock and key in a vault, and we only take out for payroll processing and accounts payable processing. No wet checks are ever signed, just by the formal signature.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Ruby? Would you be open, if we were to make the appointment, would you be open to accepting that?
Yes, I would be open to accepting the responsibility
I
of
mean,
appointing.
it's a year and a little over a year.
If there is no objection, I would make a motion to appoint our finance director, the city treasurer, until the next municipal election.
I'll
I
second.
So I have a motion and a second. As part of any further discussion, I do want to just also brief the public again. We've had this discussion in past meetings. I think it was last year. And the ultimate, I guess, strategy that we worked up to was to go ahead and keep this as an elected position for one more term, to which Mr. Miranda was elected to.
Which we're in the middle of right now.
Which we're in the middle of right now. But what might be proposed come 2017, just for the public's edification, is we could place it on the ballot at that time to keep it permanently appointed. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, that's true, Mr. Mayor, and it doesn't cause the same problem that it would have if we put it on the ballot last time, because the election 2017 for a new treasurer would only be for the balance of this current term.
Okay.
And then if you put that issue to the voters, it would be at the end of the current term.
Very
So
good.
it would work out just fine.
Okay, unless there's any further discussion, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Not in favor? No abstentions?
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Ruby, do you have no prepared speech?
Does she get the $100?
Yes.
All right, moving on to our next item, item 4C, discussion and potential action to approve request to double the number of replacement bleachers for the two highest use park facilities, adopt a city council resolution to amend the budget to the Parks and Recs Department in the amount of $41,200 with backup material on pages 54 and 55.
So moved.
Parks and Rec Director, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No comments, no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Not in favor, no abstentions. Motion carries. Which takes us on. Thank you very much.
That was easy, Pat.
Mr. Mayor, on item 5A, it says budget review by Ruby Walla, Finance Director. It's actually Finance Director and Treasurer. So if you need to make that correction.
I will, for the record, have our clerk amend that. Thank you. Which moves on to our next item. Item 5, our departmental reports. 5A is the 2015-2016 mid-year budget review by Ruby Walla, Finance Director and Treasurer.
That'll take a little bit of time to get
Yes.
used.
That one we won't approve quickly.
I always need help with this one.
A little bit over, maybe 2 more. 1 more? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Ruby Walla, Finance Director. This evening, and City Treasurer, newly appointed. This evening, we're updating City Council and the public with a mid-year budget review for the 15-16 budget year, and it covers the period of July through December of 2015. So the 6 months, the first 6 months of the fiscal year. It's following the same format as we typically have over the last mid-year reviews. So the purpose tonight is to go over a budget overview, review of significant funds, and a snapshot of actual versus projected. So overall, the approved 2015-16 budget, just to give you a snapshot of the summary sheet, which was adopted by council, the beginning balance, which considers all funds, is a little over 35 million. Our anticipated projected revenues for the current fiscal year are 47 million, and expenditures approved is 52.6 million, with an ending balance of 30.5 million to carry us into the 16-17 budget year is proposed. We have no general fund revenue use for operational expenses. However, just to highlight impacts of the general fund overall, the installment payment that we have with the regional board, the general fund capital projects, which there was a various for some departments, JPIA contributions, we're still working through those, but we make the significant adjustments through the budget process, and of course, Affordable Care Act, we've had to make mid-year adjustments continuing this year, which take effect actually not the prior fiscal year affects this fiscal year, but then again, we're moving into January 1 adjustments. For the 15-16 total city budget, 47.9 million. Of that to date, we're at 30%, so at a little over 14 million overall in revenues, and expenditures we're at 38. Just wanted to highlight overall on the 38%, it's a little bit higher than last year, and that has to do with CalPERS. CalPERS did their adjustments on how, not so much on the employer contributions, but basically how we pay them. They basically now front load a cost, and then we send them incremental distributions. So it's just that our monthly contributions are slightly smaller on a percentage-wise, but we actually gave them an advance payment, a lump sum payment ahead of time, so that's why a variance.
Ruby, I have a question before you move forward. Going back to the prior page, you could go back to that one. Okay, that one. Okay, so this is the approved budget for the fiscal year.
Yes.
And the ending balance, is that the anticipated balance at the end of the fiscal year? Is that what?
Yes, after our approved revenues and expenditures with any other adjustments, if there's any budget adjustments that are being accounted for, we're anticipating to have 30 million overall
end of the fiscal
end
year.
of the fiscal year to
Okay.
carry us through the next budget year.
Okay, thank you. Just clarification.
Which comprises your general fund, water, wastewater, and all special revenue funds and enterprise funds.
Okay, thanks.
For the revenue summary, 2015 versus 2016, We have overall in the budget $867,000 more now than we did last year at mid-year. And again, that's highlighting budget versus actual, where we are. And so it's basically like we're inlining our projections and so forth and staying within. As we go through the budget process, what we do is go through myself as well as departments as we go through and say, you know, look at your overall revenues, if it's the building department, Parks and Recreation, Public Works, whoever it may be, and go through and see, are you trending the same? Do you see any significant decreases or any significant increases? So that's basically giving us an, overall, we're at a 6% increase. Last year, we were actually at a negative.
Decrease.
Yeah. So, and then I wanted to highlight, but that you have a 6% increase overall, but then you have in your general fund a 6% decrease in comparison to last year. So it just averages out in the end, but significant things identified are, and working with HDR, our sales and use tax is down, and probably going to be a little bit down than projected originally because the fluctuation in gas prices, that's significant. We did have the beef plant closure. We did have other assumptions like car sales and so forth too. We kind of worked that in this, about this time last year, working with HDL to get assumptions. If X comes in, what do we look like? So those are some of the impacts. Utility user tax is slightly lower than projected. And that has to do, one, I would call for water conservation. Two, as well, is just the timing of when we receive utility user tax. The city has control over water, sewer, and the trash utility user tax, because that's what we direct charge and we handle the billing. But anything we receive from gas company, IID, they all lag, you know, a month behind because we get paid the following month. So that's a contributor as well. But other budget adjustments and impacts, again, highlighting affordable care, water conservation. But projections in overall for service charges directly, they're pretty on target, and we'll go over that in a future slide. And then, of course, decrease in sales and use tax, increase in property tax income, though. We do have a significant increase in property tax. So property tax revenues are up. And again, that was had to where the assessor's office did a shift in how they, in their programming and how they valued properties. So it was just time's catching up now. And so we are realizing that jump. Good for the city. I guess not so much for the residents. And then there is shown to be an increase in the volume of permit fees as you get those schedules from the buildings department as far as the activity. So that activity has increased. And then again, we have the contributors that impact in connection with that impact fees and capacity fees as well. Now we'll go by just the major funds, just to identify, to give where we're at. Again, revenues, and this is a normal trend. 33% on the general fund revenues and 54% overall with expenditures, which is, you know, it's just the timing of revenues, again, that impact that 33%, because we start receiving some significant funding sources January, so that's the fluctuation there, but we pretty seem to be on target except for the overall last year versus this year, as I stated earlier. So the major revenue sources for the general fund, again, property taxes, overall a 9% increase. We're at 58% of the, as projected. A BLF swap, this is one that is a significant revenue stream, and it's actually $2 million. We received one distribution in January, and we just received that. It's over $1 million, and we received the other half in May. So that's one of significant funding sources. And then the sales and use tax. It is significantly lower in comparison to this time last year, and we're at 22% of what we budgeted. And utility users tax is at 43%, and then the 16% decrease in comparison to the prior fiscal year. Any questions at all? So just a reminder on preventative measures that we do for budget overruns. At a department head level, department heads review their department-specific budgets. They prepare budget adjustments as necessary. Majority of them are internal and at the city manager level, and what that does is basically just shift between line items, if there's any negatives, office supplies, repair and maintenance, whatever, as long as they can work within their budget. Then we move on to city council in the event that the department head realizes that they cannot work within their budget and they need to actually ask council to make a budget adjustment to, in this case would be, as we have been utilizing general fund reserve or any other funding available fund balances. And then the finance department, we review purchase orders, we review the revenue and expenditure report, we review invoices, and we ask questions and we review and making sure departments are requesting purchase orders per purchasing policy, if they're prevailing wage, that they're authorized expenses, that they're licensed. I mean, it's just a number of steps that we do as we're doing, reviewing the budget and payments and payroll and so forth. So we have gas tax, our streets fund 211. We're at 48% for revenues and at 24% for expenditures. And again, just to highlight, basically, it's a direct charge. So we make assumptions with salaries and operating expenses, but we charge these funds specific for their purpose, that they are working in streets, if they're working on the right-of-ways, and they're eligible expenses under gas tax guidelines. And we're actually going through an audit at the moment with the gas tax, so it's been interesting. We're on week 2 of 3. So the next streets fund is Measure D, and we're at 3% and 31%. 3%, if you recall, this would be considered, I guess, normal at this time, or we will see through this year would be normal, is because we made the change in how BOE is distributing our Measure D funds. Because if you recall, we had to come to council with a budget adjustment on approving a payment of a debt service payment, and that was because the revenue stream wasn't coming in as projected based on the funding analysis. So they went back and did an amendment with BOE, and now what they're doing is, instead of taking a piece of the pie throughout 10 months or so, they're taking all of Brawley's debt service payment up front. Once we meet our debt service payment, then we start receiving distributions, which we have done so now as of November. The water fund, this goes back to the revenues are at 50%, so it gives you indication that our projections and pretty much on the waterfront with service charges are pretty much on track. And expenditures are at 25%. And again, for the low percentage, again, it has to be with the types of activities wherever the streets and utility staff primarily, where they're working. If there's a lot of streets activity, that's where we're going to see the time, if it's water or wastewater. And then again, because we budget making assumptions on what we assume the type of activity between streets, water, and wastewater would be. So that's why you have those types of fluctuations. So water fund additional information, just to highlight again, just so we don't lose sight, we still have the water fund loan from the wastewater fund at $1.6 million originally. We are on payment 3 of 15 at approximately $102,000. And then the other thing we wanted to highlight is rate increases are coming effective March 1st, which was approved by council on November 17th. So we're working as staff to update the rates. We have them posted so that staff, when they come in to make their payments, they can remember and, be aware and ask questions at that time of, what size is my meter? Because most people probably don't really know the size of their meter, and now that's going to be the driving factor for water service charges. So the staff at the counter are actually talking to them and educating them on how their bill will be impacted.
Have we made changes? I mean, have people come in, the ones that had the 2s, and they said it was too big, and they didn't really understand when they first had it done?
We haven't had anybody make any changes significantly. I have one account that did change from a 4-inch to a 2-inch, and they took the initiative to do that because in the long run they thought they would realize the savings. At this point, if they determine that that's going to be a benefit to them to change out, it's actually at a cost to the customer to change out, because the city actually, for the residential community, put in those meters. So if they truly want to switch out the meters on size, that would be
a decision of financing decision on their end. We do, on a proactive sense, when they read the meters every month, which is usually about the 15th of the month, there's a stop meter report that actually comes out, which is like an error report. And I know that the public works staff, the streets and utilities staff, they go out and they start checking those meters, and they're like, why isn't it reading? You know, because sometimes you have some inconsistency in the meters where we've seen where it reads 0 1 month, and then all of a sudden it jumps, and we've been trying to clear up those matters. And they do make replacements as necessary, but if the meter's working, there's no need for the city to change it, but it's open to.
What is the cost?
The costs vary from.
It depends on the size of the connection.
But kind of
several $1,000s. It can,
Really?
depending on the size.
It's expensive.
Wow.
I would think,
Yeah. So, but no, if I know that the staff will go out if they have 2 connections or a meter, and they'll actually, I think, engage with the customer if they're present and ask them, do you still want the service? Is it, because they don't know, the streets and utility staff go out there, but they don't know exactly what that connection is servicing at times. So we do spot checks as well. Like with this process, we've been reviewing meter sizes and trusting that everything in the system is correct. But we have spot checked and said, you know, can you go verify that this is the meter size for this account? Because if it, you know, that way we can correct it early on rather than 6 months down the line, someone inquires about their bill and say, well, no, I don't have a 1-inch meter, or I don't have a 2-inch meter, but you guys are billing me. So we're trying to be proactive in that sense of the 5,600 accounts to try to, you know, capture what's reasonable and what would be correct for a residential versus a commercial.
What is the standard size for a residential?
3/4 to 1 inch.
So if they go out and, let's say they do a new development, what size would they normally put?
3/4.
3/4, okay. So that's the standard.
For residential, yes, and that's what our schedules, and during city council discussion with the rates, that's where we broke out the issue where because we were going to this we are going to this universal approach of meter size. That is a driving factor, to identify an account by a meter size rather than like number of units and so forth, because then it gets a little, you know, complicated, or, you know, we have mixed use. We try to identify a lot of variations that happen throughout our city, especially in the older part of Brawley, that have different, like, mixed-use facilities. So,
How about that one that I sent you, the one where the elderly lady had 2 meters, and our staff told her that she didn't need 2 meters. You know, my understanding, she was being billed, or did we find out?
yes, from what I had to go and find out, well, they came out on that stop meter error report, and it came up that it wasn't reading. So they finally went and checked it, and they went and it says, well, there's no usage. There was very minimal usage over, like, I mean, it was dated pretty much, but those meters were actually installed with the initial implementation and installation of meters for the city. So it was dropped in at its original. I know, talking to staff, because I wasn't part of those conversations early on when they were switching to the metering project, but there was engaged, from what I understand, a town hall meeting with the community to address those that have large connections, that have multiple connections, because I know on the billing side, working through the operational end of things, there were customers then coming in and they would say, can I get that connection abandoned because I don't want to be charged for 2 meters? So they would do that as well.
But, okay, so if they change it from, you know, one size to the other, they get charged. Like for her, if there's other ones that had 2 meters, but they're only using 1, are they going to be charged for them to be?
They get charged for every meter registered.
But what I'm saying is, they disconnected hers, I believe.
So she will no longer be charged, because there was a work order returned to our department that actually stated that the customer requested to have the connection abandoned, and we have inactivated that account.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
So that was on the rate increases overall, so I wanted to highlight that that's up and coming, and we're prepared, and staff is ready for questions, and ready, you know, and being accommodating in the sense that people want their meters checked, and be detailed in the sense of understanding their bill.
Yeah.
Wastewater fund is at 48%, and, which is roundabout, but it was giving indications of other measures at the same time, but we're close to the 50% target at mid-year, and expenditures are at 43. So basically, this tells you that there's far more, in comparison to the other funds, there's far more wastewater activity going on than the streets and water fund. Airport fund at 48% in revenues and 27% overall in expenditures. It's not highly active. It's basically project-driven. Whenever Yasmin's out there getting money, that's what this fund is highly driven on. And then again, to highlight the wind down of RDA, not to shed too much light on it, but just to give you information, as the ROPS did come to the successor agency, and I just wanted to highlight a few things that I got the opportunity to highlight with the oversight board, but to brief the successor agency on is the DOF changed their way of reporting, so we kind of had to rapidly, they changed their date from March the 1st to February 1st for our reporting, and with that, they changed to an annual report. So now it's an annual report due February 1st. Instead of March 1st, and then again in October 1st, we would meet every 6 months. They would have a semi-annual reporting, now it's an annual reporting. And they have, the other thing I wanted to highlight is the calculation and administrative allowance. We used to be, minimum was $250,000. Now they have a different, it's like, you get $250,000 or, and then or. So basically, the redevelopment agency is not, or the successor agency is not at this point eligible for the $250,000, and that's basically saying we're at wind down. We're not receiving, it's a basis of your RPTTF funds, so of our distribution, and which is basically what we report as our obligations for the former redevelopment agency, and basically we're just at debt service. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is, again, and you all are aware, but we closed and settled in our 2006 tax allocation bonds, and after closing it, we did better than we anticipated, so that's good, and all the taxing entities benefit from that. And then the other impacts with RDA is we're still working on going to move forward with the sale of the property as proposed in our long-range property management plan. That's one of our steps to do. And we also have the opportunity to, without doing this portion, but I'll confirm that, to do a last and final ROPS as well. DOF received an opportunity to do a last and final ROPS, but you need to have a finding of completion by DOF, which we have received. But at this time, this last ROPS was not eligible because we were in the process of a refunding.
And then when we're done with that RDA wind down, I'm sure the state will have us wind up again for another RDA system, but.
Well, they have different, I think,
This has been 3 years, I mean, it's.
And that's actually it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ruby. Council, anyone have any further discussion or questions?
I was just going to ask, when you put down need to proceed with next steps to sell property.
Yes, with the RDA wind down process, the city had to recognize and report all the assets on hand. And we have a property valued at a little over $1 million. And that's what we recognize in our long-range property management plan as owned by the redevelopment agency, which basically we have proposed that we will sell. And then the proceeds then go back and then get distributed.
Are we talking about a particular property, or?
Yes. That's on.
Its location is North 7th Street.
Yeah, 7th and Jones.
The termination of 7th into a vacant parcel.
And that has to be sold by, is there a date?
No, we just have to be in compliance with our long-range property management. It's been approved. The first step was getting to have the report prepared. Council approve it, oversight board approve it, went to DOF for their approval. That's been all approved. It's just a process of now putting it for sale, yeah.
Okay. So we are working on that.
Thank you. Mayor Wharton, just as a quick note, I believe Ruby is prepared to advise the timing of our 14-15 audit results. That is an item, that report that is in a draft form, and we will be bringing it to the council in April Or is it March?
We're hoping for March. We're working really hard to get that closed up. We had some with the new GASB 68. There's some more notes that need to go into play. And GASB 68, so you know, is just basically how we report our pension. Never booked on the books as a liability, and now it's always been there as a liability. Now it's bringing it into our financials as it showing as a liability. So, and then we had to have notes. So we're working. We already have all the draft financials, except we're just cleaning up the notes in that sense. So we're hoping to have it to the city council in March.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank our
Finance Director,
Good report.
and City
Slash
Treasurer.
treasurer. Excellent report.
Was that the City Treasurer in you, or was that the Finance Director in you?
Both.
Both. Little, yeah.
Finance director.
Good answer, there we go. That's the one that
Excellent.
pays
And
the bills.
I want to thank also our continued acknowledgement of all our department heads. We understand it takes all of the departments to keep not only our budget on track, but again, appreciate that very much. So we look forward as we move forward into the budget process coming up for next year. So again, very thorough report. Thank you. That'll bring us to our next item. Unless there's any other further questions, there we go. Next item will be the review of Reverse 911 by our police chief, Mike Crankshaw, as well as our fire chief, Chuck Peraza, with backup materials 74 through 82. Go ahead, chief.
Excuse me, Chief. I was just gonna like walking behind a police officer.
I'll just help you with.
It's not a safe place to be.
Is that the beginning of your presentation, Chief? Is it questions? Questions? We were reverse? Reverse?
Psychology.
There you go.
Thank you, Sharon.
The next. That is the big one.
That is
No, it's the
big.
next one.
Yes, if you go to one more over. It's hard to see, I know, a little bit further.
Can't see it.
Because it helps when you put your finger in.
Yeah, it's
Right on
like
the
it
edge.
works.
It's not.
But no, you have to bring your pointer to here.
One more,
One
a
more.
little bit more.
One more.
To your right.
Right
There you
there.
go.
Nope, too far.
It's so hard
No,
to
no.
see from down there.
Right there, now you got it.
Thank you,
Uh,
thank you.
One more over.
One more over, just a little bit that to the left or the right. Yeah.
It's a lot
Let's just
bigger.
move the whole keyboard.
About 10
Keep your
o'clock,
fingers
we'll all
still.
go home. Thank you, Shirley. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Mike Crankshaw, Police Chief, joined by Fire Chief Chuck Peraza. Tonight, we did an assessment. Back in November, we had an opportunity to activate our reverse 911 system. We had discovered that it wasn't, it underperformed at the time that we had used it. So we wanted to do an assessment from the public safety standpoint to find out why and what it was that we could do to correct that measure. Synopsis was on November 19th. That a main water line was damaged during a construction project, and the water pressure fell below a certain level. Based on the Water Quality Board, it was discovered that because of the pressure, even though for the slight amount of time it was under, that a boil water alert should be sent, notification, and we had an opportunity to use our reverse 911 system for that. Later on, it came to find out, discovered this is the first time in the county that we've used such a large-scale version of this new system, Geocast. During the incident, it was discovered that our web-based system, Geocast, did not perform as expected, and during the first initial call-out, only approximately 32% of the targeted residents received notification. As we went through the process, we looked at 4 major issues that we wanted to look into: the extended lapse of the original notice, the failure to translate the first original message into Spanish. There was a lack of clarity using the default computerized voiceover system, which at sometimes you'll find that when you're using it, even the system has issues, so it will spell out words.
It's a literal, it becomes literal, right.
Exactly.
Right.
This is actually one of the main reasons as we go on of what the failure was for the low percentage, which is number 4 of actual residents that were contacted. I did want to include, though, that some of the timelines here is just the county moving forward into using reverse 911. In 2008, there was a countywide grant that was received, and there was a telephone-based system that was put in place. 2012, it was better. At the time that we used the telephone system, there was 2 main servers located in the county. One was at one of the offices and one at the jail area. And it was found out that the system itself was limited. So they moved forward with a committee, and they adopted this GeoCast system, which was the company in 2012 that went to web-based, which allowed for a lot more options. Again, it was discovered through this assessment process that the very few departments that actually use this on a large scale. In fact, there was a much smaller scale in the city of Holtville, and then there was a time where, well, it's still unsure if it was used or if it was a different system, that they had a incident around in El Centro around a school. The good thing about the system with GeoCast is you can do what's called a geofence, and you pull it out and it hits a specific targeted resident. So you could actually do a small area around a certain location, or as we did in this one, we actually geofenced the entire city. So some of the things that I think it's good backup to know when we move forward, when we're trying to assess what it is that we could do. So some of the things I wanted to go back a little bit. We were talking about the 4
items that were of issue, right?
Correct. I just wanted to have that in front of me. So the extended amount of time, it really was just a very minor on ours. When we were looking at, first of all, there was a longer period of time from the actual time that it occurred where, till the time that we realized that this notification needed to go out. Until learning that about the water pressure falling from this certain, was almost the entire time in which we knew that we had to put something out on this that was a concern, even a precautionary concern. We did have a glitch from the staff, making sure that we had everything, from our staff, making sure that they had everything they needed to move forward with this message going out. Again, we will go back to the corrective measures, but to make sure that it was done in English and in Spanish, especially for our geographic area and our population. And so we'll talk a little bit about the corrective measures. I just wanted to make sure that we had that timeline clear. So one of the things that we put a new protocol in place once we discovered a lot of this. One of the issues that we found is our dispatch center, which does handle a lot of call volume, when they do get a request from now on, and it's in the new protocols, it's already been gone through and it's been tested, we will contact the department head or the department that requested with an immediate response email saying that we have it, we have the information, now we're ready to move forward. That will allow and make sure that it's two-way communication by the person who's requesting it to the person who will be putting that out. It's already in protocol that we will not be using the default computerized voiceover, so we will only do real-life voice. It will be the requirement of the department heads or the department to put the message. The message needs to be somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds, so it needs to be specific of what it is that we're trying to get conveyed to the audience. And that regardless of requested, it will be put out in both English and Spanish. One of the big things why we've left the defaulted computerized voiceover is we had found, and even the text at the time did not have this from the company, was that it takes quite a while for those calls to be put out through the computer. And so meanwhile, we had tried to put out 10,137 or 38 calls. Only so much can be done. The other ones are in waiting. Well, it was unknown to us, it was unknown to the computer tech at the time, that after 20 minutes, unless it's automatically updated, those calls will fall off, the ones that didn't get sent out in 20 minutes. So we were able to put out 3,000 plus calls in that time, but unbeknownst to the dispatch, the rest had fallen out. Now we have a step protocol, as you can see in number 4, that after we put out that message, the dispatcher will manually go in there and confirm the numbers to make sure through the administration that it reached the target audience. Now, that was the original, that was the most crucial one. Once we started to discover this thing, we put these in play, and we had 4 more successful usage of this. We had 2 more notifications about the boiled wire alert, and it reached, we put out in 5-minute increments, both in Spanish and English, and it reached over 20,000 people. The other thing that was going on, I failed to state this, is we learned about capacity lines, because this is a land-based system. We're doing it during a peak hour times. The phone servers only had so much capacity that they would allow us. That's what took so long for those calls to come out. So we have now, with the use of real voice, we won't have that issue. And we use that on all the other times, the other 2 notifications, and then the 2 rescinded notifications, and we reached our targeted audience. So we were, in fact, the guinea pigs for the county to learn this. All this was brought up to the county and to the other jurisdictions. Chuck, if he gets back, on the 23rd, we have a PSAP meeting with all the counties and a new rep from this company to come in and talk to us about upgrades and to ensure that we have all this dialed in. PSAP is a public safety answering personnel, and they have quarterly meetings now.
Chief, if I could add just a comment there. I remember during the time that we had the reverse 911 call, that was my chief concern, and I remember speaking to the city manager with respect to the computerized voices. They would often spell out numbers, and so it was very confusing for people. And so the human voice seemed to correct all of those issues. And with respect to what you're saying, calls falling off, it looks like you've eliminated that problem. So, I mean, you probably could reach 10,000 people in 2 hours, right? I mean, it's less than that, right?
And the other 4 times that we activated this,
right,
we actually did do that. And we did in 5-minute increments, so we did it twice each time. So it did work as designed once we realized all the nuances of it.
Kinks there, yeah.
I actually received those calls on because I have a landline, but as you noted in here, the folks that don't have a landline, they didn't get a call, correct?
Yeah, and that's actually going to be, well, like I said, if Fire Chief gets back, if not, I'll move forward with that. I failed to mention, though, using the old telephone-based 911 system, they had a 40 to 60% success rate of actually contacting people. Mm-hmm. Now, understanding that the 2 main things that occur is, A, they contact someone and they pick up the phone, or B, that they'll get a no answer, and those are the 2 main ones. There are a couple other variants in there.
Answering machine too? There's
Correct.
Another variant, yeah.
Yeah, so what it's basically doing is picking up, is this call being listened to a completion? So that's what it's determining if it actually got through or not.
Chief, I have a question. With respect to the call, when it goes out, what is the caller ID for that call? So when people are seeing it, do you know where it's coming from?
What is their show, yeah.
I don't know that. Perhaps did you have a caller ID on yours?
Well, I do have caller ID on my phone, but I picked up the phone when it rang, and I can't remember what it indicated.
But just out of curiosity, that may also increase the number of people that will take the call. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that we touched on a point, and again, the fire chief will step in on something that he had learned after this, but that this is a landline-based, and we had looked at 91% of the people don't have
They don't have
landlines
them
anymore.
anymore.
So this
I don't
was,
have
everyone, you have stuff, talk groups like Nexel and some of these others that are more set up for for your cell phones, cellular stuff. Although that there's some charge to this, when this is a conversation that will occur at the meeting, that you can actually do a step down. So it would hit your landline first. If they got no answer, it would go to your cell phone, and even one further, it would go to your email. We're looking at that as
I just wanted to say that the caller ID said City of Brawley.
Okay, very well,
okay.
thank you.
Didn't want to know.
Thank you.
It's okay, you can't.
everyone kept.
That's probably why I answered it. That's why I
It said
answered it.
City of Brawley.
Very well, thank you.
I'm like, holy heck.
They thought-
So what we did find out was, I mean, in 2008, this was implemented, and it was through a grant, and it was mainly incorporated for landlines. But one of the questions on the county website is, will I be guaranteed a received call when a disaster occurs? The very first response is no. And mainly because it had to deal with the overloaded phone circuits and so on and so forth. And that's why they did the upgrade in 2012 as well, so you can start including cellular phones and everything. But when you do a mass notification on this type of system, it gets overloaded. And we didn't find that out until after the fact.
And landlines are one thing. How are we, first and foremost, two questions. One, where are we getting those phone numbers from? And how are they submitted into the 911 system? And two, if we're going to be looking at acquiring access to cell phone numbers, how is that going to be, how does that work?
It's the responsibility of the individual to put
Okay,
their own
to-
phone
to-
into it.
okay.
So with the reverse 911, you actually had to put in your
So
own
we,
phone
just a
number.
media sort of
Yes.
push to get people to sign up, all right.
And then, well, I'm sorry.
But where are you capturing the phone numbers that you currently have? So it went out
The
to
landlines.
10 or 20,000 people. Where did you get those numbers from?
It was strictly through the landlines.
But where
But
is that coming
It
from?
was the people that had registered.
Okay,
as well.
so it's just
And
registered.
sometimes it was capturing some of the landlines that were not registered, but because it just got overloaded on the system, eventually it dropped.
Okay.
So I think also to help on that is that some of the servers like AT&T and stuff, you're able to use their database to put
Okay,
that in.
that makes sense. So they already have
Okay.
the phone numbers.
Right.
You're just sending
So-
it through their system, right? Okay.
Right, because I get storm alerts and other things through Verizon, through AT&T, through my email, so it comes kind of automatically on my cell phone. And it seems like that's one coverage, but maybe that's just AT&T's coverage.
Right.
Maybe there's others that are out there, and so that's one scope to
Right.
look at. I agree
And
with
and
that.
what you'll see on a grander scale is regardless almost anymore of who your server is, if you look at Amber Alerts
Yeah.
and stuff that come through.
Right.
But I will tell you that regardless of what system you use, community outreach for self-registration is going to be the secret. We can do quite a bit of different mediums. Now, based on, even if you had everyone signed up with a success rate of 40 to 60, which seems to be within the average range, to have another system, and then that's one of the conversations that we will be moving forward. This is a fluid, we want to make sure that we're staying up with the technology and stuff, will be that maybe that we look at a possible redundant system as well. So we may look at another media where you have some groups and agencies and stuff, they have all kinds of different media from, Facebook to Twitter to some of these other ones, so.
Wouldn't like an insert in our billing, water bill or anything, something like that, have a little card in there that says, please fill it out?
I think any and all, one of the things that we are looking at, just as we're kind of roundtabling.
Not to give you any more work.
Kind of roundtabling how we get this message out, how do we get self-registration, is when our explorers do farmer market, we would be looking at trying to bring people in. Those are just some of the different events that you could try to get to the community to, hey, get a couple friends, get them signed up. It's always going to have a benefit to our residents, so.
There's a phone app that we looked at, Mayor Wharton and I have looked at in the past, and it was a communication tool, right? It would be like a City of Brawley branded web app, phone app, and so it would acted the same way. It would have a reverse 911 feature, so if a message went out, it would go to everybody's cell phone, right? And so maybe that's something we could look at as well. And aside from that, you can have like a Parks and Rec calendar on it. You can do a bunch of other things on it too, so.
Well, currently, so on this one here, if you wanted to get onto our geocache system, simply you would go to the link, the website, and you could add yourself to that system. You could also look up to see if you're already on that system by way of
searching, yeah.
Yeah, by the server itself.
database.
Because you're a customer of this, would you already be on there? Unfortunately, like I said, most people kill their landlines, and we're all kind of a cell phone-based
Majority,
group. So.
What happened, in most disasters where we've had major earthquakes and stuff, a lot of times cell phones go down, sometimes the landline goes down, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times the cell phones will go down because they just crash. I mean, you got so many calls, volume of calls. So this really won't work in some of those types of situations, I'm assuming. It works well for notification of, say, water boiling or stuff like that. But when it comes time to major disaster, I'm not sure that the system's going to be able to handle the volume.
Right, and I think that we need to make sure that it's not one-off or one-size-fits-all.
Panacea.
We need to have a couple different options in front of us. That's why I was thinking a redundant system would be a good. I did have an opportunity to speak with our county representatives, and the system prior to this one, and one of the reasons why we even moved up and upgraded on top of the things that the fire chief had brought up was the earthquake, when Calexico actually used that system for that area specifically, and they had average 41, 42, 43% success rate. So that really falls within that ballpark as best case scenario is 40 to 60. So that means we're 40 to 60 that we're not maybe reaching. So
Right. And then those people also tell others too, so it's.
Yeah, so you do get some notification through that, through word of mouth. If you reach enough of them,
Right.
you do get some notification. There may be other avenues. There used to be disaster radio type stuff and all that type of thing that comes on, but I think in this case.
For the city.
Yeah, or somebody.
Well, the one thing that you can be assured of is that we are going to continue to move this conversation forward and take these to a county-wide forum so we can continue in having a good, healthy discussion with the new techs. For those of us that weren't on the system when it came out, to find out what upgrades are available and what else we can do is going to be extremely beneficial. So, and that's going to happen, I believe, you said the 23rd?
Yes, I'm sorry, Chief.
No, that's fine. The 23rd is this first meeting, and that's when we're meeting with the reps, so.
Well, it's good to see that the city of Brawley's taking the initiative on this, because it showed that the other cities really haven't done much, so.
You know, I was a little bit shocked to find out that there hasn't been really a true test to this type of thing. So we do practice on a monthly basis. Most emergency communication centers do a mock workup. Obviously, they'll pick a selected number to see if that came out. Usually it's a family or friend or something to that thing. That's their one geofence number, so.
Chief, thank you for the thorough evaluation as well as the findings. I think it's great. My only additional comment is we live in a day and age where we can certainly look at the misses on what had occurred, and I think to improve, that's one thing. But you mentioned social media, you mentioned all the other forms of communication that we have now. Probably the flip side of that compared to 10, 20 years ago is probably how much notification did actually occur, maybe through more of those informal channels. I don't know if there's a 100% system out there, but leveraging everything that's at our fingertips right now and moving forward with the best possible plan is probably the best. But I'm still impressed with just how many people through the informal channels even knew.
Right.
And that's why I think versus it really, if you go back to a time and age where it was phone only, or pretty much was person-to-person notification.
Some people don't have any phone.
Right, and there is the off-the-grid, type lifestyle.
And I received a call one time, I guess there was a prisoner or something that escaped from Pioneer Memorial Hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, because they called our area because we live close to that area. So that was pretty, I was really impressed with that we got that call.
And that was actually the county.
Okay.
And And they weren't,
That's interesting.
yeah,
They had a select area.
and they have select area,
Right,
yes.
right. yeah.
Wasn't citywide.
So, I mean, it works, you know,
Yeah.
when you want it to. so.
We just reached the town gossip. It'll go out pretty quick, you know? so Everybody will know pretty
You
soon.
find the right 2 or 3 people
Hey,
in
right?
town.
Everyone knows, yeah, everyone knows.
Gene Bouver's.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, both chiefs. We'll move on to item 6, our city council member reports. And I'd like to begin, if we could, with Councilmember Noriega.
Well, I was trying to remember if I had gone anywhere here, but as you heard, I went to the retreat, and I prayed for all of you and our city to do well, and those that want to get away from us, or, you know, you guys are all staying, because I prayed that we all stick together. So if anybody plans on going somewhere, you're not. We prayed very heavily. You guys have done a great job, and congratulate you on that, and congratulations to our new treasurer. I think that's great. And Pat, keep up the good work with all the children. You're doing a fantastic job. Public Works, great, Asmund. Chief, good as always. IT, doing good. Chief of Tech's over there? I know. Anyway, great job, great staff, you know, everybody works together. Library,
I'll see you tomorrow night.
yes, I will be there. I will be there. I might take my code too,
Good?
so they can, you know, kind of learn of what we do and stuff like that. But everybody, even our 3 always here newspaper people, thank you for being here and putting us
I just want to-
on the air and in the paper and everywhere else. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you, Councilmember Noriega. And that was your mid-year review as part of the budget as well. So we'll move on to our next
Yes.
Councilmember Howdy.
Okay, well, I did manage to attend a few events during the past 2 weeks. I attended the Merle Norman grand opening. That was a very nice event. And there was 3 of us that attended. And I think the new owners are very, very, very appreciative that we were there, and that the chamber representatives were there also. I was just a little disappointed, I hate to say, because I kind of looked for it in the newspaper, and I didn't find anything. So I don't know if it was due to the lack of maybe the chamber contacting the newspapers to be there, because I think they probably expected something to be in the paper. So, you know, I looked in both papers and I didn't see anything. Then Councilmember Noriega and I attended the Hidalgo Society installation of officers on the 6th, and Mr. Camp, our former council member Don Campbell, was the MC for the event. That was very nice, and so they had a good turnout, a good program. And then I attended the senior meeting, the senior center meeting. They invited me to attend this past Thursday, and just to share with them anything that's going on with, you know, city activities. And then they share their concerns with me, of course. And as a matter of fact, I need to talk to one of you out there. And then I was honored to swear in the new officers at the senior center, so that was very nice. And I'd like to commend all the staff, because they're all very accessible. I'm always, you know, always have some questions about what's going on. And I'm always, I feel bad for Alma, because I call her, you know, a bit too much. But I want to say that all the staff, and including our city manager, are very accessible. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Howdy and Councilmember Nava.
Well, thank you all, staff. You all are working hard, and fellow council members, thank you as well for your leadership. So it's been active past few weeks, but a few things I'll share with you. The Merle Norman grand opening, that's always good. It's very difficult to be in business. For anybody who's ever been in business for themselves, it's tough. This is a franchise that they're opening, but regardless of that fact, there's still an enormous amount of money invested, and I wish them a lot of success. They just need to be very persistent, and I hope that they do very well. So congratulations to them, and thank you all for being out there to support them. One other item, I was here just the other day, I chaired the Unmet Transit Needs annual meeting that we have with ICTC, and that's where we get information from the public with respect to the transportation usage in Imperial County, and if they have needs that they would like to request of ICTC, that's when they present those items. And so we've been successful in the past in addressing most of the concerns. There's always new ones and fresh ideas that come up, and some that are here today actually participated in that conversation, so I appreciate the comments we received. And we will have another meeting here in the near future to finalize some of the comments that were made and seeing if we can address them as an ICTC board. So that was that'll be up and coming. Another item with respect to ICTC, and I just want to give my appreciation to the support that I've had from the fellow commission members on ICTC and of course Caltrans. When we first had the bypass, I had the privilege of opening that up as a city mayor at the time, and we've had multiple accidents out there and fatalities. In fact, my family's been involved in an accident out there on Hoveley and State Route 78. And so through some persistence and support of the rest of ICTC board, we were able to make some change and gain some influence within Caltrans, and they expedited that process to put some signalization out on the Brawley bypass. And so over the past year and a half, we've seen added striping, and they've had other items. The yield signs are also lit, just various changes. But more recently, they've actually invested the time, the energy, the resources, the money to put some signal lights out there. So that's they should be up soon, and of course there's going to be like a media campaign to let people know that there are signal lights, so that doesn't result in other fatalities because people aren't expecting the signal lights to be there. So I just want to publicly express my thanks to Caltrans. Sometimes those items take years to accomplish, and I think because unfortunately there have been multiple fatalities at that intersection, and it's affected not just the lives of Brawley residents that have either been impacted by accident or loss of life, but really it's just affecting a lot of people that commute through there. So thanks to Caltrans, thanks to ICTC, and I hope to see that as a safer environment soon. So just again, thank you all very much, and let's just keep on rocking and rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nava, and we have Mayor Pro Tem Couchman.
Okay, thanks. Basically, on February 3rd, I attended a meeting at Committee to Civico with the EPA, officials from the EPA, and I was more in attendance just to hear what was being said. They really mostly talked about air pollution, and I thought that was interesting. There's a lot of concern about air pollution due to breathing difficulties that the residents have here in Imperial County, and so that was a real serious topic that they got into, and they had the EPA officials here to hear that. They gave us a brief presentation on some of the issues that we have, and so that was an informative meeting, and I did receive some information from that meeting. Our city manager was also in attendance. I also attended at Chabella's. They had a convertible car club that came down, I believe, from the Palm Desert area, and they were here, and I just had a welcome for them to the city of Brawley. They asked me to do that. Our mayor, I think, was out of town at that time, and so I was able to fill in for him and give them just a little welcome. They had a meal out at Chabella's, and I kind of welcomed them into Brawley. Appreciated that they came down, and they came down as a group. There were a lot of cars, and they were an interesting group, and they had a lot of neat convertible cars they were driving. So, and I gave them the welcome, and they had dinner at Chabella's, and that was neat for Brawley. And then also on Saturday, we did some Pioneers Museum cleanup. Several Brawley residents were there, and they're getting prepared for their Saturday event, which is their Pioneer Days out at the Pioneers Museum. And so we went out and cleaned up the blacksmith shop and some other things. We'll have a blacksmith presentation out there, but they'll have a lot of other historical presentations regarding the history of our valley. So I think that's important, and people, if they can attend, that's a great event to take your children to, and also just review some of the history of the valley. So, and with that, that's all I have to report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Couchman. And then for myself, over the past couple weeks, primarily been focused on working closely with the chamber, preparing on that end of it for the upcoming mayor's address. Look forward to that. That's kind of our opportunity to really communicate directly with the chamber membership. We really emphasize our will and want as a city for business growth, certainly encouraging the current businesses that are located here. So I look forward to that opportunity coming up. Just a couple things I want to put out just coming up in the future. The Renewable Energy Conference will be coming up next month. I know we have council members here that do attend that, and we look forward to that coming up. And I also want to just kind of conclude with the upcoming strategy workshop and kind of encourage all of us council members to really remember what that's about is you come in with some of the goals that you even set personally that you'd like to put forward as a council that we can look at as a city. I would encourage you at that workshop. It'd be a great place to have that discussion. It's also our opportunity to look back at what we have accomplished, the goals that were set over the past year or two. But moving forward, really kind of strategizing before we go into the budget process, because we all know that it takes money to make things happen and make things work. So with that said, I want to echo what everyone else has said. Once again, just with mid-year budget review, it's always a great time to kind of look back and really reflect on the fact that we have a lot of great people within our staff that really make that happen. And I think it makes us all look good, and we're very proud of that. So appreciate that. With that conclusion, I'd like to move on to our next item, which will be item 7, our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Wharton. I just have a couple of items to report out. One is to update the council on the recent interest expressed by the EPA and the regional board in cleanup of 2 properties within our city limits. We're currently evaluating whether or not these locations may meet all of the criteria. The Regional Water Quality Control Board staff actually reached out to us. They said they have a mandate from EPA to invest more significantly in the Imperial County region, and the group that was in contact actually deals specifically with petroleum-based contamination of private properties, and they're utilizing a map that designates certain APNs within our city limits. So the 2 locations, one of them is actually quite interesting on Main Street. It's Eastern and Main. It would be immediately east of the Family Dollar store. And then the other is immediately east of Hinojosa Park. And it is, the property on Main is zoned for commercial. The property on, that would be Cesar Chavez and H, it is zoned for R2. So interestingly, there's a history of tanks being on those properties and potential for contamination, and the EPA and Regional Board are looking for either a nonprofit or a local agency to apply for assessment funds. The assessment application process consists of a very basic 2 pages. They provide all the technical support. They just cannot award the resources to a private party. So what they were asking was what the city might see as its role in applying for the funds. The funds never actually move through the hands of the city. They're entirely managed by a consultant selection process that's performed by the EPA. So we are well on our way to looking at the merits of these 2 sites. There is no liability that the city faces relative to involvement, but the piece of the puzzle that has yet to be fully resolved is what the private purpose is for reuse. And so unless there is a live developer on the back end of the cleanup effort, we can't proceed. It looks like the Main Street location has a commercial developer that specifically looks for brownfield sites. They will be here in town in the not-so-distant future to evaluate that property. And from what I understand, a local contractor who does a lot of infill development is interested in the R2 lot. So provided all of the stars kind of align for the requirements, we may have some great projects to pursue with the help of federal and state partners. Also wanted to note, we've got our State of the City on February 26th, Pioneer Day, February 20th, out at the Pioneers Museum. Collab Breakfast, March 11th, and I'll be reaching out, or staff and I will be reaching out to get RSVPs for that. And then lastly, wanted to make note of the Employee Appreciation Luncheon, and the date of that is March 30th. And so we certainly welcome the participation of council in that celebration, and it will take place once again at the Lions Center.
Could I ask that our city clerk, could you please send us those invites tomorrow, just so we have them on our calendars?
Make sure
The banquet you should have already.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And that's all I have to report.
All right, thank you to our city manager. And item 8 will be our city attorney's report.
Went to the League of Cities conference on medical marijuana, went with the new treasurer, Ruby, went too. To take away from that is the really good news is that March 1st deadline was an actual mistake, and the governor has signed a bill. It was a drafting error, was left in accidentally. And the governor signed a bill already, and that's gone. So we can proceed in an orderly fashion on that issue. The other big takeaway is the league says you don't get too excited about medical marijuana because recreational marijuana, it will probably be on the ballot in November. And they said that that's really, there's one bill in particular, and it's being sponsored by the Lieutenant Governor, and it's very likely to be on the ballot. And that's really going to just throw everything up in the air.
It'll all be up in the air.
So that's that. And the other thing, that if you haven't tried Brownie's Taco Cart, it's super good.
Excellent. Thank you to our city attorney. We'll move on to item 9, our city clerk's report.
Just a reminder of the state of the county.
Yes, that's
address on Thursday.
Thursday, at the museum, I think.
And I send you a little, I emailed you, there's public transportation, but you have to be at Main and
In El Centro
in
by
El Centro
5
by
p.m.
5:15.
Sam's my public transportation.
In the back of my truck.
Very good. I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. We're moving on to item 10, closed session.
Thank you.
Yep, sure. Take 5 minutes.
Say 5 minutes.